There's a special kind of ache that comes when your child looks at you like a stranger. Not with hate. Not even anger. Just that cold, flat disinterest that says, you weren't there. And the worst part is, you were. You were there the whole time. The last time I saw my son, he was walking across a football field in his cap and gown. Back straight. Shoulders squared. Face proud. I stood way back behind the bleachers, wasn't invited, not officially. His mother said it'd be too weird if I came. Said it was his day, and she didn't want drama. So I kept my distance. Watched from the sidelines. Clapped quietly when they called his name. I hadn't missed a single one of his milestones before that. First words. First bike ride. First stitches. I was there when he got chickenpox. I was there when he failed algebra and didn't want to tell anyone. I was the one packing his lunch at 6 a.m. and sitting through parent-teacher conferences. I was the one who tucked him in when she didn't come home. I was the one telling him she loved him even when she hadn't said it herself in weeks. And now, he wouldn't even look at me. Blocked me on everything the next morning. No explanation. No warning. Just vanished from my life with a digital silence I didn't know how to break. I thought maybe it was a phase. He was 18, maybe angry about the divorce, about the life he didn't get. But then a mutual friend sent me a screenshot. A post. From my son. On some private account I wasn't supposed to see. It was a picture of him and his mom, arms around each other, big smiles. And the caption underneath? To the one who stayed when he walked out. I never needed him anyway. I sat down. Just like that. Like someone pulled the floor out from under me. I read it 5 times. 10. And then the rage hit. Because I didn't walk out. I never left. She did. Over and over. My ex-wife, Melissa, was always the runner. She chased adventure like it owed her something. New jobs, new towns, new men, anything that made her feel young again, wanted again. I spent years holding things together while she chased freedom. At first, it was just long nights out. Then it was weekends away. Then it was a business trip that turned into a 2-month stay with an old friend from college. I begged her to stay. For our son. For us. She said I was boring. That I didn't see her anymore. What I saw was a woman who used to hum while she did the dishes, who used to fall asleep on the couch with her head on my chest, and who now looked at me like I was a wall in her way. The final straw came on a Wednesday. She didn't come home. No call. No text. Just gone. 3 days later, she sent an email. No subject line. I need time. He's better off with you for now. That, for now, turned into 4 years. And I raised our son. Alone. Through puberty. Through heartbreak. Through school dances and scraped knees and late-night talks when he was too sad to sleep. He asked about her every now and then. I never bad-mouthed her. I just said she was figuring things out. That she loved him, even if she couldn't always show it the right way. And then, one day, she came back. Just like that. Said she'd found herself. Said she was ready to be a mother again. I was cautious. Told her if she was serious, she needed to prove it. Needed to be consistent. She played the part well. Picked him up from school. Took him out for weekends. Smiled at the right moments. And slowly, he started leaning toward her. Trusting her again. I was proud, in a strange way. Thought maybe this meant he'd finally get both of us. What I didn't realize, was that she was rewriting history. And I didn't know it until it was already done. I don't know when she started poisoning the well. Maybe it began with little comments. Half-truths. Things like, your dad just couldn't handle me, or, he always wanted things his way. Nothing big at first, just enough to shift the foundation. That's how it works, I guess. You don't have to burn the house down to change the story. Just move a few bricks. Change the lighting. Tell it from a different angle. And by the time I figured out what she'd done, it was already built. The version of me she handed him was a ghost. Some man who couldn't take the pressure. Who left. Who let her carry it all alone while he chased some other life. She didn't say it outright, at least not at first. But she didn't correct him either. And that's worse. When your kid's got a question and you let him believe the wrong answer long enough, it becomes truth. Connor started pulling back that year. Little things. Fewer texts. Shorter phone calls. The visits got rare. The conversations got thinner. I asked if I'd done something. He said, "You wouldn't get it." And I didn't, not until the graduation, and the block, and that damn caption. I called Melissa the day after I saw it. I didn't shout. Didn't curse. Just asked, straight, "Why did you let him think I left?" She paused. Took a breath. And said something that still sits in the back of my throat. Because it made it easier for him to love me. I sat down on the porch steps, phone still pressed to my ear, wind hitting me like the world was trying to cool a burn that wasn't going to heal. "You lied," I said. "I survived," she said. "I did what I had to do to have a relationship with my son. You were always going to be the hero in his eyes. I needed to be something." I wanted to scream. To remind her of every diaper I changed. Every homework assignment I helped with. Every birthday cake I bought when she didn't show up. But I didn't. Because I realized something in that moment. She wasn't sorry. She didn't see it as betrayal. She saw it as strategy. And the damage was already done. You can't reason with someone who believes their needs justify the ruin they leave behind. So I hung up. And I sat there on the porch for a long time, listening to the birds, the wind chimes, the hum of a neighborhood that had watched me raise a boy who now thought I'd walked away. Later that night, I pulled out the photo album. Old school stuff. Printed photos, faded Polaroids. Connor's 5th birthday, cake smeared on his cheeks, me holding him up with one arm, a smile that could have lit the whole room. First baseball game. Me in the stands. Him in a too big helmet, looking up at me like I was the whole world. The father-son camping trip. He caught a fish and screamed like he'd just seen God. All real. All mine. But none of that mattered now. Because the only thing stronger than memory is narrative. And she'd changed the story. Now I had to decide. Do I let it stay that way? Or do I find a way to tell my son the truth? Even if he doesn't want to hear it. I didn't reach out to Connor right away. I wanted to. Every morning I'd pick up my phone and stare at his name in my contacts, still there, even though I knew the calls wouldn't go through. Blocked. You never think it'll be your own child. A number you once used to call in from work just to hear how school went. Now silenced. Cut off like a stranger. I started writing letters instead. Not to send, just to write. At first they came out raw. Angry. Pages of things I never said during the divorce, things I'd swallowed while trying to be the better man. Then they softened. Turned into memories. Stories. Pieces of a life we'd shared that I didn't want to see erased. One night I wrote out the story of how he learned to ride a bike. How he fell twice, skinned both knees, and still got back up. How he turned and shouted, "Don't let go." And how I already had. He never knew I ran beside him for weeks before that day. That I waited until I was sure he could balance. That when he finally rode away on his own, I cried like an idiot standing in the driveway. That's the thing about fatherhood, so much of it is invisible. If you do it right, they don't even know how hard you work to make it look easy. But when someone rewrites the story, Suddenly, all those invisible things vanish. I started going through old boxes in the attic. Birthday cards he made me in crayon. A macaroni picture frame with a photo of us at the zoo. Notes from school where he wrote, "My dad is the strongest person I know." I held on to each one like proof in a courtroom no one asked me to appear in. And still, part of me wondered. What if she wasn't the only one who rewrote the past? What if, in protecting him from her failures, I'd erased my own shortcomings too? So I made a list. A hard one. Times I missed things. Times I lost my temper. Times I made him feel like he had to take care of me instead of the other way around. It wasn't long. But it was honest. And I knew that if I ever got the chance to speak to him again, I wouldn't just defend myself. I'd own what I got wrong. But I wasn't there yet. So I waited. Then one day, I saw him. Not planned. Grocery store, of all places. Aisle 7. He was taller. Broader. His hair longer than I remembered. He didn't see me at first. I just watched him for a moment. Picking out cereal. Phone in one hand. Just, living. Then he looked up. And our eyes met. 1 second. 2. He didn't smile. But he didn't turn away either. I gave a small nod. No pressure. No approach. Just an "I'm still here" kind of look. He blinked. Gave the faintest nod back. Then turned and walked away. Not fast. Not angry. Just, walked away. And I stood there, hand resting on a cart, wondering if maybe that tiny nod was the first stone turning over. If maybe. Just maybe. The story wasn't finished yet. 2 weeks passed after that grocery store moment. I replayed that nod in my head like a film clip, his eyes, the pause, that barely there movement. To anyone else, it wouldn't have meant a thing. But to me, it was a breath of oxygen after months underwater. I didn't chase him that day. I didn't call. I didn't try to make it a moment it wasn't. I just let it be. Then, one morning, a message came through. Connor. Just a name on the screen. No subject. No emojis. Just 4 words. Can we talk soon? I stared at it so long I didn't realize I was holding my breath. I replied simply. Anytime. Just say when. He picked the park near the school he used to go to. The one with the crooked swings and the benches that always had initials carved into them. I got there early. Brought 2 coffees. Just in case. He showed up in jeans and a hoodie, hands in his pockets, eyes guarded. That was okay. I wasn't expecting a hug. He sat down. Took the coffee. Didn't say thanks, but didn't push it away either. It was quiet for a bit. Wind blowing through the trees. Some kid yelling from the basketball court in the distance. Then, finally, he said, "Mom told me you left." I nodded slowly. I know. He looked at me. Did you? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to say no. To spill it all, emails, custody schedules, the nights she didn't come home, the tears, the way I begged her to stay. But that wasn't the point anymore. I wasn't here to win. I was here to tell the truth. I didn't leave you, I said. But I did stop trying to fix something that was already broken. He watched me, unmoving. I told him about the years. The birthdays. The nights with the flu, the math homework, the time I drove 2 hours to pick up the cleats he left at his cousin's house because he had a game the next morning. I told him I made mistakes. That there were nights I got it wrong. Times I was short-tempered. Times I cried in the car because I didn't want him to see me falling apart. And then I told him this. Everything I did because I loved you. Not because I was perfect. But because I refused to leave you behind. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he asked, why didn't you tell me sooner? I smiled sadly. Because I thought you knew. That cracked something. He looked down at the coffee cup in his hands and said, she made it sound like you didn't care. Like you just bailed. I nodded. I figured. And I didn't want to make you pick between us. I just hoped time would tell the truth. He looked at me again. Not the cold stare from graduation. Not the confusion from the grocery store. Something else. Something open. Do you still have the picture of us at the lake? He asked suddenly. I blinked. Which one? The one with the big rock. Where we both tried to skip the same stone. I smiled. Yeah. Still on my nightstand. He didn't say anything, but I saw it, just for a moment, in his eyes. That maybe, just maybe, he remembered it the way I did. I didn't push for more. We finished our coffee. Talked about nothing for a while. Music. Work. He was thinking of taking some classes again. I told him I was proud of him. He didn't say much when we left. Just nodded again. A little fuller this time. A little more sure. And as I watched him walk to his car, I realized something. You don't fix lost years in a single afternoon. But sometimes, a quiet conversation on a cold bench is enough to start turning the story back around. We started small after that. A few texts here and there. A shared lunch every couple of weeks. Nothing deep at first, weather, traffic, the local sports team. But it was something. A rhythm. Like trying to tune a radio to a signal you forgot existed. I didn't ask about Melissa, and he didn't bring her up. It hung there, unspoken. A space between us that hadn't quite been cleared out yet. And I think we both needed it that way, for a little while. To build something new without tearing at the old, not just yet. Then one Sunday, he showed up at my door. Unannounced. He had that same look he used to get as a kid when he broke something and didn't want to admit it, hands in his pockets, toes scuffing the welcome mat, eyes darting everywhere but mine. Got a minute? He asked. Always, I said. He came in, sat at the kitchen table like he'd never left. I poured him a cup of coffee before he could ask. He noticed the photo, the one from the lake, still on the shelf above the sink. He smiled, barely. Then he said it. I asked her. He didn't need to explain. I asked Mom about everything. The leaving. The stories. You. I waited. She doubled down at first, he said. Said you gave up. That she stepped in when you dropped the ball. Then he looked up at me, steady. But I remembered things. Stuff she didn't count on. Nights when I couldn't sleep and you'd read to me. The time you sat through all 3 of my choir concerts even though I saw you flinch when they hit the high notes. That one made me chuckle. She said you lied to her. That you manipulated me into thinking she was the one who left, he said. Did I? I asked, quietly. He shook his head. No. You never talked bad about her. Not once. Even when I asked where she was, you just say, she's trying to find her way. I nodded. That was true. I hated you for so long, he said, voice softer now. And I think deep down, I hated myself for not asking sooner. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it settle. Let it stretch just enough to let the truth breathe. Then I said, I never needed you to choose. I just needed you to know I never stopped showing up. He nodded, eyes wet but not crying. We didn't hug. Not then. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. A picture. Me and him, sitting on the rock at the lake, side by side, both mid-laugh. He handed it to me. I found it in an old box at Mom's. Figured it belonged here. I looked at the photo for a long time. That rock. That boy. That moment. Real. Untouched by revision. I stood up, walked over to the mantel, and placed it next to the one by the sink. Two anchors, side by side. The story, starting to balance again. That night, after he left, I sat alone in the quiet. Not sad. Not angry. Just full. Because there's a kind of peace that comes, not when everything is perfect, but when the truth finally has a place to live. And now, for the first time in years, it did. 3 months later, I got invited to Connor's birthday dinner. First time in years. He was turning 21. Some friends, a few cousins, a casual thing at a restaurant downtown. He told me it was no big deal, but his voice gave him away, he wanted me there. Not as an obligation. As his father. So I showed up. Slacks. Button down. No cologne, he used to hate that when he was a kid. Said it made me smell like the mall. Funny the things that stick. When I walked in, he was already surrounded, laughing, arms draped over shoulders, eyes alive in a way I hadn't seen in a long, long time. And when he saw me, he smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one. He walked over, pulled me into a quick hug. You made it, he said. Wouldn't miss it, I told him. Melissa was there, too. Across the room, drink in hand, trying not to look. But she did. Eventually. Our eyes met for a second. And she looked away. No nod. No smile. Just the kind of glance people give when they know the truth has landed. I didn't go over. Not out of pride. Because I didn't need to anymore. Connor sat beside me during dinner. Told a story I'd forgotten, about a time we got caught in the rain walking home from school and used his math homework as an umbrella. Said he still remembered how we laughed the whole way, soaking wet, shoes squeaking. He said, that was the first time I realized you were more than just the guy who paid the bills. I told him I didn't remember the story. He said, doesn't matter. I do. That night, after the cake, after the toasts and awkward group photos, we stepped outside together. It was quiet. City lights blinking. That warm kind of night that only shows up in early summer, when everything feels a little more possible. He said, thanks for coming. I said, thanks for inviting me. Then, after a pause, he asked, do you think we can keep fixing this? I looked at him, really looked at him. A man now. Not the boy I raised. Not the stranger who once blocked my number. Just Connor. Trying. And I said, I don't think we're fixing. I think we're finally building something new. He nodded. Yeah. I like that better. We didn't say goodbye. Just stood there for a bit. Like neither of us wanted to be the first to leave again. I went home and sat at the kitchen table for a long time, hands wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold. And I thought about all the years that were lost. All the things I could have said sooner. All the stories he still hadn't heard. But instead of reaching for the past, I looked at the present. At the empty chair across from mine. At the photo on the mantel. At the stillness in my chest that used to be something else. Sometimes you don't get justice. You just get a chance. And sometimes, that's enough.